Welcome to our training webinar on the simple planning tool for climate hazards version 2.0. Next slide, Darian. My name is Rachel Riley. If you don't know me already, I'm the director of the Southern Climate Impacts Planning Program located at University of Oklahoma, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Darian Bertrand, who's our SCIP Climate Assessment Specialist, also at University of Oklahoma, and Charles Simpson, who's SCIP's data analyst, and he is located at Louisiana State University. Next slide. Before we get into the thick of things, I want to mention a couple of housekeeping items. First, during this main presentation part, we have the settings such that you're unable to unmute yourself and you're unable to show your video. But when we move to the question and answer portion, then you will be able to unmute and show your video if you desire. That said, you can use the chat function at any time to ask questions. We will primarily, hold questions till the 30-minute Q&A at the end, but if you think of something and you want to put it in there, you're welcome to. And then also when we get to the Q&A portion, you can also use the raised hand function if you'd rather, speak up. We are recording this today, although we will trim off the end so that in case you don't want to be recorded, asking questions, we'll trim that part off the video, but it will be recorded and available for viewing later if you have colleagues that weren't able to join live today. So today's plan is that I'm going to first give a brief introduction to SCIP, followed by an introduction to the simple planning tool and kind of a little bit brief background on how it started and how it came about, along with where we are today with version 2.0. Then we'll transition to Darian, who will give a live demonstration of the tool and show some examples of the individual tools that are within the larger one and give you some insight into what kind of information and outputs you might be able to find when you use it. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer. We will have an opportunity to ask questions and we can further elaborate on things. Next slide. So for those of you who maybe don't know anything about SCIP, we're the Southern Climate Impacts Planning Program. We started in 2008 under a competitive grant awarded from NOAA. We cover the 4-state region you see on the screen: Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana. And our primary institutional partners are University of Oklahoma, Louisiana State University, Texas Sea Grant at Texas A&M, and Adaptation International. We're part of the NOAA Climate Adaptation Partnerships program, formerly called RESA, and our website is southernclimate.org if you haven't visited it before. And then we're also on a couple of social media platforms, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Next slide. So here's a quick map of the fellow climate adaptation partnership programs that NOAA funds. And we, of course, are in the South Central US. I think click one more, Darian, to get that red box. We don't quite cover the entire country at this time, but there's efforts to do so. Next slide. So now on to the simple planning tool. If you're not familiar with it, it is a compilation of relatively easy to use online interactive tools, maps, and graphs that can assist planners, emergency managers, and other decision makers who are assessing long-term climate risks, both historically and in the future. And the goal is to take you from what might be the space on the left, where you don't really know what's available. It's kind of, the World Wide Web is wide open with all these climate tools and data, and you just may not know based on your history, what is trustworthy and available. And so the goal is to move you from that face of despair and, overwhelm to the face on the right, where you kind of have a sense of, okay, here's generally what's available for my region, and here's some trusted tools that I can go to. Next slide. The idea for the original tool came from a workshop we held in Oklahoma in 2017. We brought together planners and emergency managers, and for a different reason originally, and then through the conversations we had at that meeting, we realized that there was a great need to help point EMs and planners and other related officials to knowing what climate hazard data tools exist and how to find it, and what does climate change mean for their area, and so forth. We also engaged in Arkansas, and then through a couple of subsequent workshops, ended up developing the original versions of the Simple Planning tool, which were PDFs and just had the cover pages you see on the screen. Next slide. And then a couple of years later, we engaged in Texas and developed a Texas version, and then followed by a Louisiana version. And the reason that there were 4 separate versions is because we found that tailoring to the state level was really helpful, so that when officials go and look and try to figure out what's available for their state, they know that what they're looking at is going to be relevant to their area, and they don't have a bunch of fluff that isn't relevant to them. Next slide. So this is what the table of contents looked like on the original PDF version. Most of the tool focuses on, points to climate hazard data, as I'll get to in a moment, but this table of contents was clickable. And then next slide, you'll see an example of what one of the hazard pages was. So this was for hail, and this was, I think, for Texas. And basically at the top of the page, we had a data limitation section, and then that was followed by several data tools that are available. Now, the hail one's a bit shorter because there's fewer tools, but some of the hazard pages that span multiple pages. We would have, the name of the tool, the kind of name of the product, the period of record in which the data are relevant for that tool, the organization that hosts it, a brief summary on what information you can find from that tool, followed by instructions, the URL, and then on the far right, a sample image of what kind of output you might get from that tool. And then at the end of each section, which is at the bottom of this page, we had a future trend section, which is a succinct summary of how that hazard has changed over time, if at all, and how it's projected to change with climate change if it's scientifically known. And those statements are tailored to, again, the state level and the hazard. Next slide. So we have now moved from having those PDF versions that were painstakingly difficult to update to having a fully online format. And this is available on the SCIP website on our tools page. I put the URL at the bottom. And what you see when you go to the tools page, you'll see at the very top, Simple Planning tool. We do have other tools listed on this page, and these are kind of legacy tools that were developed over the years at SCIP, and so they're all kind of still individually listed. Next slide. So when you click on that original link, you'll get to this page, which gives you the 4 states that we have the information tailored to. I'm seeing chats that people can't hear. Darren, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, the audio sounds fine for me, so I think it may just be individual computer issues, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe try turning up your volume, or when the recording is posted, then it might work better for that time.
You can also try rejoining if you would like to try again and see if it's better next time.
Great. Thank you, Darian. So our Simple Planning tool is still tailored to each of our 4 states. Now, if you are on today's call and you work in multiple states and some of them aren't within the SCIP region, or maybe you're not even from the SCIP region, we'd like you to know that there's still likely going to be a lot of tools within these versions that are relevant to you. So a lot of the tools that we have individually linked are national tools or kind of large scale regional tools. And so some of the information is probably still relevant to you. Now, if you are needing coastal information, those tools will be in the Louisiana and Texas versions. So to start off, I'm going to show you an example of kind of what the new tool looks like. And I'm just going to share screenshots, but when Darian goes in later to give you, a demonstration, she'll be doing a live demo of the actual tool. Next slides. So say, for example, you clicked on the Texas version. This is kind of the first half of the page that you'll see. We still have, very much the same information that was in the PDF, but now it's in an online form. In the center, you have, it's, focused on the hazards. And then next slide, you'll see that if you were to scroll down on that page, you'll see the, next slide, there we go. You'll see the remaining list of hazards. Now, this is for Texas, and so we do include coastal hazards in this version, like high tide flooding and sea level rise, but the Arkansas and Oklahoma versions won't include those coastal hazards. And then on the left side of kind of the left menu, there's a hazard section that you can click to expand. And so you can also navigate to the different hazard sections based on that left menu. So for one example, let's say you want to look at heat extremes. So you can click either on the left side or the center portion that says heat extremes. And you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this. So at the top, there is data limitation section that just briefly describes kind of what's available for that kind of hazard. Different hazard sources have different periods of record and kind of different limitations. And so that's why that's at the top. There's also a definition and description section where we've heard from over the years talking with stakeholders that sometimes you just need a quick definition to put in a plan or something or some, grant application. And so we have this copy text button that you see that you just click that and it'll, copy the text from the definition and description to your clipboard and you can paste it into a document. Next slide. So then if you were to keep scrolling down on the extreme heat section for this, you would start to see the historical data tools that are available. And again, this is very similar information to the PDF, just laid out slightly differently. You'll see in section 3 here, the name of the tool, the period of record that tool applies to, the organization that hosts the tool, also a brief statement about what information you can expect to get from the tool, followed by instructions on how to use it. And then on the far right, there's a sample image of what kind of output you can expect. So sometimes you might get, the individual tool might produce a graph, it might produce a table, or just some, you might be looking at a map. So it varies depending on the individual tool. And then when you click the View Tool button, that will take you to a separate, pop up a separate window in your internet browser. Then if you were to continue scrolling down the page in that section, you'll come to climate change trends section. In the PDF version, we previously called this future trends, and so now we're calling it climate change trends. And this gives you a summary of how that hazard has changed over time, over the historical record, if it has, and how climate change is projected to impact that hazard if known. Now, in this example, it's actually showing Arkansas, as if we had clicked in Arkansas. A quick note about the Texas version is that because Texas is so large geographically and climatologically diverse, we break the climate change trend section into 3 regions within Texas to give you a little more specific to the area you're interested in. Another thing to note is that in this section 6, for some of the hazards, we have additional projection tools and maps, but not all of them. And I'll get into the reasons why for that in a moment. But then finally, I want to mention on this section 7, which is highlighted on the left-hand menu, you have what used to be appendices in the PDF version is now just are listed additional sections on the page. And these are links to additional resources if you really want to dig into things and need more details. Okay, next slide. So a couple things to keep in mind, just kind of an overarching context of this tool. Right now, we have limited climate projection information included, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, based on conversations and whatnot we've had with our stakeholders over the years, it seems like the succinct summary statements are really what's needed for most of our stakeholders. But of course, we understand there are some stakeholders that you do need the in-depth, details and the different scenarios and whatnot. And so that's why we have then some other resources that you can go to. Also, some hazards do have additional tools listed beyond just the statement, and that depends on the hazard, depending on, again, what's available, and then which ones have ones that are easy to use, and so on. And then also just using climate projection information it's very complex. There's a lot that goes into climate models, and so it can be difficult to know, like if you don't really know what you're looking at, it can be difficult to interpret, what you should be using and why. Also, a few of the individual tools contain impact information, like climate impacts and hazard impacts, but it is limited. We know that impact information is a desired element of the tool, but unfortunately there's so many disparate sources and localized data that we just haven't had the resources to incorporate that element very much into the tool. But some of the tools do have a little bit of impact data. And then thirdly, the tool is updated, not every day. I mean, it's every couple of months we might be able to, update some URLs and stuff. Now that we have the online version, it's a lot easier to update. We even know that there's tools that have come out since we originally published this version that we don't yet have included, and it's like on our to review list, and we haven't gotten to it yet. And that's just due to resource limitations. So long story short, if there is some tool that you use regularly and you think is really helpful and great, and you think might be good to be included, please do not hesitate to email us at skip@southernclimate.org to have us review it and potentially put it into the simple planning tool. Next slide. So here's a quick summary of kind of what's different between, again, those of you who are on the call today who are familiar with the PDF, the original versions. Basically, the online version just, simplifies things. It makes it easier for us to update on the skip side of things. There's a couple of those copy text buttons where you can copy some basic text and put them into your plans if you need to. And overall, we're hoping that it's just a lot more streamlined. And also, the online version gives us the opportunity to potentially add new features down the line if there's demand for that. Next slide. And a couple of years ago, I conducted a study based on the Oklahoma and Arkansas versions, because that's what was available at the time, and looked at how emergency managers and planners in the region were using the tool at the time and what impact it was maybe having. And from that study, I found that all the plans that you see listed on the screen had been informed by the SBT. And so this is just to say that there's a lot of different plans that you might work in a city or county scale or regional scale that the simple planning tool can provide information that's relevant to your plan. Next slide. And then here's a couple of quotes from that study about how the SBT was being used. And the point of this is showing that it can be used in, people working in small communities and also in large communities as well. So with that, I'm gonna pass it along to Darian to demonstrate the tool She has, the QR code is on the screen, although it might be just a caveat that, looking at the tool on your phone may not be the best thing, since it's, kind of takes up space, and the tools, individual tools have a lot of information. But you can access it using, going to our website and going to the resources tab and then the tools sub tab, and you'll find it there. And maybe Charles can also put the link to the SBT in the chat so that you can follow along if you would like.
All right, I'm going to get out of our presentation. I'm going to show a few different examples today on the different hazards that you can walk through. So let's see. All right, everything still look good with my screen share. Okay, perfect. All right, so as Rachel showed before, if you go to our tools page,
it's showing, it is showing the proper browser, but you can also see some of the.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. So again, if you go to the resources tab and then go to our tools page, then you can then go down to simple planning tool for climate hazards. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to walk through different state and hazard examples today. So first, let's just start with Oklahoma. So then we would click on our state that we are interested in. And then that will bring you to that state tailored information. I just want to make sure. All right. So the first example I want to walk through is heat extremes. We've had a ton of that lately, and heat's about to start ramping back up for our region later this week. So again, you can either click on hazards from this left-hand menu to kind of get that full list available, or look at the expandable menus in the center. So again, we have this data limitation section. So it says generally Oklahoma has pretty good quality long-term data. However, there's sometimes consistency of cumulative years on record. Essentially, it varies by station. Sometimes a station will move and that disrupts the period of record with how that long-term station is. We have the definition and description with it. Again, you can just copy text, paste it right into your plans or your risk assessment, whatever you need the information for. And then let's go down and try out some of these tools. So the first one, let's say you want to know what the hottest temperature recorded around your location has been in the past. So we're going to go ahead and again, we've got the tool title here. So it's the climate extremes tool for temperature. The period of record varies by station. So again, a lot of the tools that we have are station based. So the years won't be consistent. It'll depend on which station and location you're clicking on, but it does have up to over 100 years of data for some of those stations. And it was produced by the Southern Regional Climate Center. And again, it shows you the temperature extremes at these different locations, and it can be used to show the severity of past events that have occurred in your area of interest. So there's two types of the tool, two features of it. We want to know, what is our all-time record? So we'll go to this section B, and here are the instructions. So let's click on View Tool. It does open in a new tab, so you're able to go back and forth to kind of walk through these instructions. I also have them printed for convenience, so I'll just read them out to you. So we want to know what the hottest temperature recorded at my location is. So first, we're going to go to the product. We're going to choose all-time records. There are other options available as well, but this is the one that we'd need for what we want. The variable, we would choose high maximum temperature for that high daily max, and then submit. So then we can zoom in to wherever we would like. I'll click on a few different ones. So let's say we are down in Lawton, Oklahoma. Then you can just hover your mouse over here, and it'll show you that on July 19th of 2022, they had their hottest temperature recorded of 114 degrees. Now, again, it's important to note that period of record because this station has data that only go back to 1996. So if you go down to a different station, let's say Oklahoma City Wiley Airport, see, this one is 1996 too. I'm gonna go back to one. Let's see, this one is 1953. So they have a maximum temperature record of 113 degrees that happened in 2011. So it really just depends on what station that you're wanting to look at, of what that temperature record will be. And again, this is really available nationally. So we mentioned that some of these tools that we provide do go outside of our region as well, but a lot of the instructions are going to be tailored to the state. All right, let's try another tool. So let's go down to the temperature trends dashboard right below that on the SPT page. So this provides information since 1970, and that's actually produced by Skip. So it's one of our tools. It's one of our recent ones that we've come out with. And it shows different temperature trends at stations across the region, including extremely hot days, warm nights, seasonal extreme and average high-low temperatures, and cooling degree days. So let's go to this tool. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, we'll see if that one is working again in just a little bit, and maybe Charles can hop on and see why that one's not working. All right. I'm going to go down to our next example. Let's say we want to know about what the normal amount of heat index days and hours is. So this one is produced by the Midwest Regional Climate Center, and it has data as far back as 1973. So this set of maps has the average number of days. You can look at days with 3 or more hours, and the average number of hours per year with heat index values for a variety of thresholds. So 95 all the way to 105 degrees. So again, here are the instructions. I will read them out to you. All right, so this one, there are 2 different options that you can look at. I've been told right now they're still working on the GIS maps. It's usually available where you can actually zoom in and click around on the tool. But I'm going to show you these static images today. So this one, you can look at the annual average number of days where, at some point in the day, the heat index reached a different threshold. So let's click on 100 degrees. So we can see through the scale that a lot of Oklahoma is in that 28 to 56. Oops, there we go. The 28 to 56 days per year with a heat index over 100. So we know it's, very hot in here as well. Let's see, we've got a question. I believe that it does include some of that Mesonet information. A lot of it are these national products, like the airport stations and whatnot. So I believe that's what this one is. A lot of these tools are showing. And again, you can scroll down through these to look at, for example, if you want to know if the heat stuck around longer, so like most of the afternoon, and it didn't just hit it for 1 hour of the day, then you can also view these longer time frames, looking at if it was with, more than 3 hours per day where heat index was over 100, then we're looking at about 14 to 28 days across Oklahoma where the heat index was over 100 degrees. All right, let's see another example. If you want just a quick view of a temperature map from the Oklahoma Mesonet, we have this included as well. So when we talk about climate normals, that's a standard 30-year period. So the period is 1991 to 2020. And again, this was produced by the Oklahoma Climatological Survey, or the Mesonet, which is actually where Rachel and I are housed here at Skip. So these maps show the average number of days where the high temperature is above 90 or 100 degrees. So let's click on this tool. So following the instructions, I would know that I need to scroll down and click on either the average number of days with highs above 100 or 90. We've already seen some 100-degree days this year, so let's just go ahead and click on that and see what that normal number usually is. So Cleveland County in Norman, where Rachel and I are located, we typically see about 12 days per year with a high temperature above 100, according to the 1991 to 2020 numbers. So this one is just a quick view. If you've got like a hazard mitigation plan, for example, where you need to show the location, this is a good one to plug in of, it's really hot everywhere in Oklahoma in the summertime. All right, I'm going to try this tool just one more time and see if we've got it. All right, we may try this one again later. All right, so let's go to climate projections. So again, we can scroll down to this climate change trends section. You can feel free to read this on your own time, but you can get this concise summary. We will be updating this. A lot of the information is from the National Climate Assessment, which was just the newest version, NCA5 was just released last fall. So we will be updating this with, just a tad more updated information whenever we get the time. So let's check out the Climate Explorer tool, Climate Maps and Graphs tool. So this shows us, we can view and compare how historically and in the future, the number of warm nights or hot days are expected to increase or change in the future for different types of emission scenarios. So let's go to here. All right, so this one, let's click on a city. So, I'm in Norman, so let's just click Norman, Oklahoma. All right, so then we're going to click on climate maps. And this is all in the instructions. So from the drop-down menu, we will select days with maximum temperature over, let's just say 100 again. So there's a lot of different variables that you can choose from as well. All right, days with maximum temperature over 100. We're looking at the map version, and these are annual numbers. So then you can also use this slider in the middle to kind of use it for that comparison. And we can zoom in a little bit to Oklahoma. So on the left side, you can choose to look at different historical or the lower emission scenarios. So, and again, lower emissions, we're talking about if we drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions quickly, versus the higher emission scenario is where it's kind of that worst case scenario where we just continue to increase emissions over time. And again, when you're looking at this information, it's important to look at both sides because you're going to be somewhere in the middle. So let's keep this on historical just to see in the past what we're looking like. I'll just click on the county that I'm in. So this is giving that 1961 to 1990 average. And then on the right-hand side, we can choose to look at those lower or higher emissions. So I'll just keep it at the default for higher emissions. And then we also have this time frame at the bottom where you can use this slider to look at a decade average. So let's just say we want to know how the 2050s are looking for us. So again, you can kind of slide back and forth to look at the comparison visually. So you can see these warmer colors on the right-hand side are representing an increase of temperatures above 100 degrees. You can also look at this pop-up box on the very top right side, and that will show you some of those actual numbers. So this is a county-wide average, where in the past, this 1961 to 1990 average, we've typically seen about 9 days per year with temperatures over 100 in this county. If we look at these 2050s, then we would increase between 35 to 39. So this is not the change, this is the actual value. So it would be about 30 days of an increase for this higher emission scenario. There is also, again, in the instructions, you'll see you can switch over to a graph version if you want to just look at that timeline with the graph over time. So this may look a little overwhelming, but it's essentially, this is the historical side with the gray. You can look at the legend down at the bottom, where these dark gray bars are those actual observed data. And then whenever you get to about the 2020s, we can see what the projections are. So red is the higher emissions, so increasing these greenhouse emissions over time. Lower is what our temperature would be for if we decrease emissions. And let me switch this back to days over 100 degrees, since that is what we were looking at before. And so if we want to toggle off some of these, you can just click them if you're only interested in one of these, or if you just want to kind of clean up the graph a little bit, not have everything on there. So this red line or blue line, if you're looking at lower emissions, is that ensemble average. So it's that model average of what the number of days with a temperature above 100 would be. So you can see this increasing trend over time. And then if you use your mouse, then you can kind of look at those actual values again, like I showed before with that pop-up box. So that is a little bit of the Climate Explorer tool. We'll actually get back into it in a little while to look at a different feature that they have. All right. So now let's say we want to look at a different state. So let's choose Arkansas. If you work with different states and you want to switch over to a different one, you would just click this simple planning tool at the top heading, and it'll bring you back to that home page. So then we can go click Arkansas. And let's say we want to know more about our risk to heavy rainfall and flooding. So again, you can either click on the hazards list. So let's click from there this time. Does the same feature, so it'll just open that up. So you can read more about the data limitations, definition and description. Some of these are longer than others. So for the first example, we are going to go back to the Climate Explorer tool. So let's say we want to know historically how many days per year we've had more than 2 inches of rain. So this has, again, station data. So it really depends on what station you're looking at for how long that record is. But some of them have up to about 140 years. And it was produced by the NOAA Climate Program Office and National Environmental Modeling and Analysis Center. So I've already kind of explained what we're looking for in this tool, what it offers, and here are the instructions. And again, I will read those to you. So it takes us back to that home page. So let's say we are in Fayetteville. Type it in, click the city. So now we're going to click on historical thresholds, whereas before I clicked on this climate maps. All right, we'll zoom in on Fayetteville. So let's say we want to know the number of days with 2 inches or more of rain. So we'll just type that in, and then you can select a window in days. So with this being 1, that would be 2 inches for 1 day. If you want to look at a longer period, then you can also change this number as well. All right, and then let's just click on the nearest station to Fayetteville. You just click on one of the red points. Oh, let's change that back. All right, click enter so you can see the map changed a little bit. All right, so then all of these bars indicate that yearly value of the number of days where the rainfall exceeded that threshold that we chose. So for example, let's look at last year, 2023, there were 3 days where they received rainfall of more than 2 inches. So this tool is pretty straightforward. You can just go scroll through all of these bars if you want to look at the different years. You could also click this downloads button if you want to look at your own trend line or whatnot. If you want to look at the underlying data, then you can download the threshold data. You can also download the image, and it'll just give you this bar chart that you can plug into one of your plans. So this one's pretty straightforward. If you want to choose a different station, then you would just click map and then choose a different location. All right, so let's walk to our next example. So next, let's look at this flood impacts by river crest height. So this shows a summary of flood impacts and historical gauge information for different locations. You can use it to identify historic and recent river crest heights, flood impacts by crest height and location, and some hydrographs with those forecasts. So again, period of record change it depends on the station or gauge in this instance, where it has data of over 100 years for some locations and is produced by the National Water Protection Center. And again, every single tool that we provide is free and publicly available, which means a lot of them are government tools, but not all of them. So let's click on this tool. All right, so this is a completely new interface, by the way. It's actually a little easier to use than it was. So according to our simple planning tool instructions on the map, let's zoom into our location. So you can look at the legend on the right, but essentially any of these points, no matter their shape, are different gauges that you can click on. So let's choose this one, Arkansas River at Little Rock. So this pops up with some of the details on the right-hand side that you can look at, but we want to know more. So we're going to click on full information. So this will bring us to a new page where you can look at the hydrograph below and scroll down to the flood impact. So it'll tell you what the crest height and impact for that is, and give some really location specific information. If you want to know what the highest crest has been historically, then that's where you would find this to the right here with historic crests. So that gives you the crest height and the date that occurred on. So this one went back as far as 1833. You can also look at the recent crests. So it shows you the top 10 or so of recent values in the year. And if you scroll further, you can also look at information like where the gauge is located, and other information as well. And a lot of these pages also include the different flooding categories, and what that height would be for reaching that flood stage as well. So there's a lot of information you can dig through. We were mostly pointing out these historical values because that is a lot of what the simple planning tool is intended for, is this long-term information. All right, so there's that tool. Close out of these. We also have a FEMA produced tool, the Historical Flood Risks and Costs. This one is for 1996 to 2019. So it shows different flood events by county and the cost of flooding based on the National Flood Insurance Program information. So this one, again, is pretty straightforward. You choose your state. So we're going to choose Arkansas. And then you can just hover your mouse over the different counties. If you want to just have the default of statewide information, then you don't have to click on anything and you can just scroll down and mouse over the number of flood events by year on this graph. And then you can look at the costs of flooding with the average NFIP claims payments and the average IHP payments. So that's what this one provides. If you want to click on a different county, then that will change this graph, but the NFIP information will stay at a statewide value. So this one is pretty simple and gives you some of those, dollar numbers associated with the NFIP payouts. All right, and let's see. All right, now we are going to jump to a different state and a different hazard. So let's go back to the top. I'm going to choose Texas this time. And let's choose tornadoes. All right, so again, you can read about some of the data limitations. A lot of this with the tornado data is limited prior to the 80s because they were written down and not digitized until later. So some of that information was lost in the translation to an online database format. Tornado tracking is a lot better now than it used to be just because of increased technology, more structures in the way of tornadoes, more populations of people being able to, capture that footage and report on tornadoes. So there's a lot of nuances with the tornado data. Tornado Tracks tool, I really like this one. It's from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center and offers data from 1950 to 2022. And it just shows you all of the different historical tornado tracks over time. So let's click on this tool. So let's pan down to Texas. And let's see. So we're going to use this panel on the left to, there we go, to identify which tornado ratings we want to include. So if you only want to look at the really strong tornadoes of the F or EF 3 through 5, then you can check these. If you want to look at all tornadoes historically, you can click all of these boxes. So let's just look at the stronger tornadoes. You can also filter by the year range. So I'll just leave this as the default. However, if you are only interested in like the last 10 years, then you can change this value as well. And then we can filter by month if you're only interested in, how many tornadoes have hit my county in April throughout time. You can also choose this track or point, or to show for the whole county image. So let's just go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to reload this page because, of course, today it's going to give me technical difficulties. Let's give it a minute to load. Go back to Texas. Let's see. All right. Of course, things, work whenever you're testing and then just has a bad day whenever you need it. So we'll give this one a minute. We'll go ahead and click on a different tool for now. All right, so let's scroll down to tornado days maps. So this is from the Storm Prediction Center with NOAA. It has an average of the number of tornadoes that have occurred over time from 1986 to 2015. So it gives us that average. So let's click on this one. So at the very top, there's a lot of different choices. So we're going to click on this 30-year severe climatology, and that will take us down to all these different maps. So here we'll see, you can click on all tornadoes, or if you want to look at a specific rating. It also gets into other hazards, which we cover in different sections of the SPT. So let's just look at all tornadoes. So we're going to click on this. So we can see in Texas, a lot of the northern and eastern part of the state is in this category of the at least one tornado per year within 25 miles of that point. So essentially you can use this again in that like location part of your hazard mitigation plan or whatnot to just kind of show this overall picture of this part of the state is prone to tornadoes. So this is just a really simple, quick snapshot that you can use to kind of show that average and the number of tornado days per year. I'm going to give this one more chance, and then you know where the instructions are, so you can go look at this one later. I do really like this tool. So whenever they're obviously just having some kind of technical issue right now. So whenever you get a chance, just go on this one and you can actually click on your county. It'll give you a really nice GIS map of all of the different tornado tracks. Woo, there we go. Okay, awesome. So we can go click on these different tornado paths. I'm going to zoom in, but I'm afraid to break it again. Oh, I shouldn't have done it. Oh, there we go. It's going to load for me. There we go. Okay, so let's say we want to know the tornadoes in Waco. Again, I have the stronger tornado categories checked, so this F or EF 3 through 5. If you want to show more up, I am not going to mess with it again. So I'm just going to leave it as these strong tornadoes. So you can just click on any of these paths and it will show you the date, the magnitude of the tornado. So this was an F5 that occurred on May 6th, 1973. You can look at how many miles it traveled, what the width of the tornado was. If you click on the actual county, let's see, make sure I have this county checked. If you click on the county, then you can actually go to this larger image where it'll show you all tornado tracks since 1950 to 2021. So these are just really nice, clean GIS maps that you can put in your plan or whatnot. And you can just kind of scroll through, click around on a lot of these and kind of see what tornadoes have affected your county. Right. All right, and then for the next one, we're going to look at the storm events database. So this is the National Centers for Environmental Information. It has several different hazards for tornadoes. The data goes back as far as 1950. Again, remember those limitations that I provided to you. We can look at the historical tornado reports from the Weather Service with this tool. I know this tool is used a lot in emergency management. So first you select your state. So again, we are in our Texas example. So we're going to choose Texas, click search. And then you can choose different begin and end dates. So let's just say I want to know since 2020, January 1st, 2020 through March of this year. We can just do all counties for now. You can click on your individual county if you would like to. And then in this event type box, you would just go down to tornado. If you want to look at just, different strengths of tornadoes and the ratings, then you can choose a specific category, or you can just leave it as all tornadoes, which is what I'm going to do right now. And then click search. So this essentially pops up with all of these individual reports. So these are all hyperlinked, so you can click on them for more information. So this is the summary table where it provides the county, the date that that tornado occurred, the time, the magnitude of that tornado. It does include deaths and injuries. I am not quite sure how accurate that is. I do want to note the property damage and crop damage columns on this tool are severely limited. So I would not really go off of just this number if you're looking for what damage has occurred from a tornado in the past, because a lot of that is proprietary information with insurance. So we're not going to know everything. So this is probably very underestimated. So let's just click on, here's an EF1 tornado from Johnson County from 2020. So you can look at all of the different reporting information, location, dates, whatnot. The narratives I find are very helpful for planning. You can read through, what the weather system was looking like that produced this event. It does include a lot of the damages. So for example, this one says a large horse trailer was moved and an 18-wheeler was overturned. So there's just a lot of nice narrative information on this page. You can also scroll down and look at the tornado path if you want to see the beginning and end points, so that B and E. And you can go back to look at the rest of these. And again, you can narrow that down to your county or different dates if you would like. Again, there are limitations. Tornadoes are the longest record with this tool. Before 1993, the reports were recorded in paper publications and then later digitized. And the software that they used was not as accurate as they hoped to convert the images to text. So a lot of the reports are not available in this database prior to that. So again, there's just a lot of caveats with using this tool, as with many of the tools, and this one in particular, it's really nice to know what all of, how they're classifying all this information. So you can go to that database details if you want to learn more. The last time I checked, this PDF is not loading at the moment, but if you Google it, I did find it in another source. It goes through how they define all of their event types, and it gives a lot of different information for you. All right. Let's see. Let's go down to our next and final state and example. So we're going to click on Louisiana, and let's look at sea level rise. So the limitations with this hazard is that the tide gauge network is pretty sparse, so there's a lot of locations that don't have data available, and inconsistent periods of records for locations that do have gauges. Satellite measurements are often used because they provide better coverage, but we don't have as long of a term of data for those since they were launched in more recent decades. So there's not always a lot of long-term data, essentially. So again, definition description that you can read later. And let's look at the relative sea level trends tool. So again, the period of record varies by gauge, but some have up to over 150 years of data. And this was produced by the NOAA Center for Operational Oceanographic Products and Services. So we can look at local relative sea level trends, which takes into account sea level rise and that vertical land motion. It also has a time lapse for the satellite imagery if you want to see kind of visually those land changes over time. All right, so this one, you can either zoom in to the Gulf Coast, to Louisiana, or you can click on the Gulf Coast tool. So as you can see, there are only a few data points available for Louisiana, but let's just go ahead and click on one of them. So this pop-up box will give a summary of what that sea level rise trend is for that location. So for example, this one is about 6 millimeters per year. You can look at, the different years that it's talking about. It's an equivalent to 2 feet of change in 100 years. So we want to know how this has changed over time. So let's choose this linear trend. So you can see its period of record goes back to about 1980, and you can look at this data over time. See if the other one has a longer term. All right, so this one goes back a little bit further. So you can read the summary here. So it's about 9 millimeter increase per year at this location. If you want to export that image, then you can click Save Image. If you want to look at that year by year data, you can also export that to a CSV. And then if we go back, we can also click on Landsat imagery, and that will show us this time lapse of, this gauge is located about in this box by Grand Isle, Louisiana. And you can look at how the land change has looked over years. So you can kind of see this little bit of shrinkage right here. You can also use the pause button and kind of click around on different years if you want to slow it down and look at a year by year basis. All right, one more tool We're going to look at the climate change trend section at the sea level rise viewer. So this one has a lot of information. The instructions are a little bit longer. It provides sea level rise information from present day all the way out to 2100. We can also look at local scenarios from 2000 to 2100, and it was produced by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And so note that this tool is located in this climate change trends section, even though it does have some information that goes back historically. But so you'll find that some tools have this. However, if the focus of the tool is on the projections, then we include it in this climate change trends piece. All right, so let's follow the instructions. We're going to click Get Started. We're going to zoom into our area of interest, so Louisiana. All right, so the default map is the current water level where darker blues are greater water depths. So we're going to zoom in to the Louisiana coast. We can click on this legend at the top right to see what the colors mean. So these green areas are low-lying, and then the darker the blue, the deeper the water depth. So now going to our SPT instructions, it informs us that we can use this slider at the bottom to see what the coast would look like with different sea level rise depths. So let's just say sea level rise was 2 feet. Then you can see all of that land loss on the Louisiana coast due to sea level rise. These lighter blues are, shallower water, but you can kind of see that encroachment as you slide it upward. To view a photo with simulated water levels, you can zoom in further and find some of these little points with the water droplet on them. So let's just look at this one, for example, Fort Pike. So you can see if you put it down at the current water level, this is what it currently looks like. And then if we had, let's say, 2 feet of water, then you can kind of see the water level increase on the picture just to simulate what that would look like over time. And as you increase the water, you can see the changes here in the photo. So that's just a neat feature if you want more visual look at it. So then we're going to click local scenarios on the left-hand menu to see the relative sea level rise by year and for different scenarios. So we can click, this one shows you this is the icon that you're looking for this time. So let's just click on this one. Again, there's not a whole lot of options for Louisiana. So the view by scenario tab from our SPT instructions says we can select a local scenario by sliding the scenario marker on the right. To view the amount of relative sea level rise associated with that scenario in 20-year increments displayed on the left. So let's say we want to look at a intermediate scenario, then we just kind of use this, click around. So we can see that, for example, in 2060, under an intermediate scenario, that location is projected to have 2.66 feet of sea level rise. So you can click on different ones. If you change it, then you can see these numbers change on the left-hand side. So 2040, under an intermediate high scenario, there could be 1.7 feet, for example. You can also click view by year. This one, select a year by sliding the year marker on the right to view the amount of relative sea level rise associated with that year for each of the local sea level rise scenarios on the left. So this one, let's just use as the default for 2050. Then we can see under an intermediate high scenario, by 2050, there would be 2.33 feet of sea level rise. So again, there's a lot of information with this tool. You can also look at this vulnerability tab to overlay different social and economic vulnerabilities. This is very high level, so there's other social vulnerability tools that you can use But this one that's integrated just gives this high, medium, or low vulnerability to overlay, so you can see how vulnerable these communities are to sea level rise. And there's a lot of other features with this tool. If you want to learn more, you can click on this little eye icon for more information for each of these tabs on the left-hand side as well. All right, that was a lot. Apologies that some of these tools had difficulties. I am going to check our temperature trends tool one more time. All right, it is going to work now, so I'm just going to slide it over here. Just to give you a quick snapshot, and then we will go into Q&A for the rest of the time so that you guys can ask questions. There we go. All right, so extreme heat, we were looking at Oklahoma. Let's just click on, let's see, Oklahoma City. It says this wants to be slow today. Let's just keep it on Abilene, Texas, unless it's going to change for me. All right, there we go. So this tool, again, has a lot of information about different temperature trends at different thresholds. You can use it for both extreme heat and extreme cold. So we were focused on extreme heat for the example today, so we're just going to leave it at this tab. There's either a station list on this side, or you can just simply click on the map of different stations. Oklahoma is a little more sparse just because of the filters that we have in place to make sure that it's really quality data with certain number of missing data points, and it goes as far back as 1970. So for extreme heat, we have this yellow bar, which is a little bit more faint. That's number of days above 90, and then orange is 95, and red is 100. So you can look at the trend line, which is this dashed line here, or the different year-to-year data points and that line as well. So essentially, this trend line, if you read in the sidebar, represents an insignificant trend. So it's not a really strong trend of increasing days above 90, 95, or 100 in Oklahoma City. And if you get into each of these points, it'll actually tell you the number of days with highs above that threshold. If you get into places like Texas, some of those you will see these solid lines, which indicates a significant trend. So in this one, there's actually a decreasing trend at that station for hot days. However, in our region, warm nights is a really big impact. And that one, you'll see this increasing trend across a lot of our region of nighttime temperatures where the low is above 70, 75, or 80 degrees. We've actually had several days here in Oklahoma where the low was above 80, and that has huge impacts for public and animal health. There are other tabs at the top as well. You can look at heating and cooling degree days, seasonal averages, different extremes. And in these, you would, some of these have a season drop down where you would choose summer for extreme heat, for example. I'm going to get into the Q&A, so I will leave you to it to explore this more on your own. And I'm going to, for now, stop sharing my screen. And also if you just have any general feedback, or if you have a tool that you have been using that you think would be appropriate for us to add, also please let us know about that, and we will look into it and see if we can add it. Like Rachel said in the beginning, we have a long list of accumulating tools and resources that we have, been hoping to have time to look at to add into here, because everything that is in this tool, we've really dug through and vetted to make sure that the methodology is good, the outputs are helpful. So if you have any other suggestions, then we will also take a look when we have time as well. And this QR code is just if you would like to sign up for Skip's quarterly newsletter, or if we have like a big event, then you may be emailed a few other times, but try not to bug you guys. And you can also find our newsletter sign up just on our website at www.southernclimate.org. So if you would like to just kind of keep up with other research and things that we have going on, feel free to sign up for that as well. All right, and we have about 10 more minutes. So if you have any other questions, we still have some time.
Think we
Right.
exhausted their brains, Darian.
I know that was a lot. We wanted to show you guys really, you know, a deeper dive into the tool and several examples so that you really know, you know, we are the ones really going through this for the instructions of making sure that step by step, you know how to use these tools. So, and if
Yeah,
you think
the
you have
big
another
picture.
question,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
in the big picture, you know, it's a lot of the stuff we didn't talk about at the beginning, but just the conversations we've had with various people over the years, we just know there's so much information coming at you all, and you're trying to sift through it, and it's, you know, it might not be your area of expertise, and you know, the demand to include and account for climate information is increasing every year, and so this is, you know, an attempt to try to help with that. But yeah, we know there's a lot of information out there, and it can be difficult to sort through it all.